Hey, what's up everybody? Chris here, and I want to offer my thoughts on the fourth episode of the Book of Boba Fett, The Gathering Storm. I think that this episode does a lot of things right. I think that, where maybe some of the previous offerings that we've had so far with this show have stumbled a little bit, where maybe the character of Boba Fett has not felt as, I don't know if ruthless is the right word, but as bounty hunter-ish as we would have expected. That's sort of remedied here in a lot of ways. And so let's talk a little bit about that. As always, if you're enjoying the content, please be sure to subscribe. If you like the video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. So I am going to be a little bit spoilery here, of course, so if you haven't yet seen it, I would say go watch the episode, this newest episode of the Book of Boba Fett, then come back and let's talk about it in the comments. But I'm going to highlight first the things that I liked here. So one of the first things that just stands out to me, as I recall watching this newest episode yesterday afternoon, is the Sarlacc pit scene. That is one of the coolest things that I've seen, honestly, between both The Mandalorian and this show, as far as kind of a callback to Return of the Jedi. We did have the scene in the very first episode of this show where Boba Fett manages to sort of, fight his way out of this using the flamethrower that's on his wrist and all of that. But that scene was a little bit too brief for me. It was kind of a nice glimpse into what the Sarlacc pit whole situation, was and how he got out of that. But I like this one more because not only does it include his ship, which I'm calling Slave One, that is the title of his ship. I know Disney has changed it, but that's the title of it. That's what it's called. He's got his ship back. He got that back from Jabba's palace, which was another great scene. And I should say this whole episode is building toward his relationship with Fennec, I believe it is. If I've mispronounced that name or said the wrong name there, I'll correct that with a title or whatever here in the video. But anyway, he builds that relationship. He does, I think, a really cool thing in getting the ship back and then going to the Sarlacc pit. It's a little bit weird to me that he doesn't recall when he got out of the Sarlacc pit that he had his armor on then, and I guess it was that he was delirious, and I think, as I recall, maybe the Jawas took it. I'll have to go back and watch that first episode again to make sure I've got that information correct. He did have the armor then, but for some reason he still thinks that it's in the Sarlacc pit, so he is determined to go and get that Beskar back, right? And to get that armor because it means a lot to him, of course, because of his dad, Jango Fett, and all of that. But he hovers over the Sarlacc pit, and even though you may have thought it was dead because of what he did with the flamethrower, it is not dead. The tentacles shoot up, grab the ship, and start pulling it in. And he did exactly what I hoped would happen, and that was deploy one of the seismic charges, and the effect of that is amazing. I mean, it was great in The Mandalorian where we saw it there, of course. It's, I think, equally cool here in that it detonates in the mouth of the Sarlacc and you see the charge sort of spread out and the ripples in the sand, and that effect really works well. So that was an amazing moment in the show to me. I thought too, once he had retrieved his ship and he hunts down the gang, I believe it is, that had killed the Tusken Raiders, and just sort of guns them down as they're using speeders to cross the Tatooine desert. I thought that was just an awesome thing because it goes back to sort of his nature of, he's become more benevolent based on his time with the Tusken Raiders, but he was not going to let that pass. And so that was a cool scene where it's just sort of this wordless moment where he flies up on them in the desert and just starts gunning them down, and him and Fennec just kind of look at each other and nod, and they go on about their business. And so I thought that was a really well-done sequence. I thought also just sort of the way he deals with his bantha in this was really cool. It's one of those kind of small things, but it just makes the Star Wars universe feel that much more fleshed out to me, those kinds of moments. And I thought, too, the way he sort of brokers negotiations with the other sort of parties that exist on Tatooine about encroaching on their territory, but also fighting back against the Pike Syndicate that's sort of looming as this big threat in the show. I thought that was handled really well, too. You get a little bit of a glimpse of his relationship with the Rancor kind of growing, too, where he gives it a bone when it's sort of shaking the table while they're having dinner and talking through things and all of that. But that was also a really cool sequence. I will say, if there's anything about this episode that I didn't like, it was sort of this youthful gang of modders that he has to take Fennec to in order to get her saved, essentially, after he discovers her in the desert and sees that she's been significantly injured. He has to take her somewhere to get fixed. And so I didn't mind the idea of that because it is a Star Wars thing. You think about Luke losing his hand and then getting a prosthetic robot hand to sort of replace that. You see that happening in Star Wars regularly. It happened to Vader to keep him alive. But I think the way that gang is handled, they sort of make a barb or issue a barb toward him about him being old and being in the wrong place. And I don't know, it kind of harkened back to that motorcycle gang that was in the third episode that I really didn't like at all. I thought that was maybe the weakest part of this episode, but overall, this episode so far has been my favorite of the Book of Boba Fett, and I think it felt like kind of a return to form, for the show in terms of, having those Return of the Jedi callbacks, and you don't want to live on nostalgia alone, but it just kind of had really solid set pieces in terms of the action. A lot of things I think that were worked in here for the fans, but it also, sort of shows how that relationship has grown between him and Fennec, and it just worked really well. So anyway, if you've seen the latest episode of the Book of Boba Fett, let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.